Welcome to another edition of Eye on Sullivan. I am your host, Mike McGuire, joined today, as we are each week, by the chairman, Rob Doherty.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Wonderful. It is still raining. We're living here in the tropical rainforest.
Today was kind of nice. Today was 74 degrees,
Today's
slight
nice.
breeze.
Yeah.
That was nice.
My lawn is a swamp. I'm sure there's alligators in there.
Well, I finally got my lawn cut, and
Wow.
Pedro to the rescue, and now I found some things I was looking for all winter. Because at first there was snow, and now there was grass. So,
there you go.
So we're good. Yeah.
Well, we've got a special guest here today. We've got Dave Cornish here to update us on what's been happening with the Department of Corrections. But before we get into that, the temperature on the upcoming primary for the office of sheriff is definitely getting up around the nuclear range.
Well, on one side it is. I have to tell you, we had both people on, and they're both very nice people.
Nice people.
I think that we would be well suited if either one of them won the race. But and again,
well, I don't know that I agree with that anymore.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know that I agree with that anymore because integrity is such an important part of that job. And when you allow the people around you, in fairness to Mr. Diamond, of course, I'm not on social media at all, but I haven't seen anything that he's had the courage to put his name to. But there should be lines in politics.
I agree with you, right?
Yeah.
So when I first ran for office,
right?
You
had no problem putting your name to whatever you wanted.
No. But when I first ran, I knew Scott Samuelson for years.
Sure.
Right? Well over 20 years. Close to 30 years I knew him at that point. And we agreed that, there'd be no mudslinging. It'd be, based on the records, right? And we went through our campaign, and, everything was fine. I mean, it was fine, and, I won that race.
It's okay for new people to come along with new ideas and espouse new ideas.
Correct. But when I ran against Matt,
right.
Now, Matt never said anything. He just sat there with his smirk, but he had, 30 other people saying Rob's this, Rob's that, Rob's this, Rob's that. Where if someone did that on my side, I would say, no, we're not doing this.
We're not doing that.
Well, we're here talking about the issues.
Of course, Matt had no record to run on.
Well, a year and a half in, he still has no record to run on.
There you go. Well,
he does have a record.
It's not a good one.
He has a record of lying because we went over his campaign promises, and he had said that him and his wife couldn't find a house to buy or rent or whatever. But meanwhile, they had already bought a piece of property in Bethel, and they had already started construction on their new home.
You can't find what you're not looking for. So they couldn't find the place to live. That's right. Yeah. So anyway, it brings me to a point that when I saw it yesterday, I felt we had to raise it.
Okay.
There are boundaries in all elections.
Agreed.
I don't care whether you're running for President of the United States, Congress, state senator, assembly, or local school board.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen them get nasty.
Oh, they get nasty.
Yeah.
I never saw one involving Catherine Doherty get nasty.
No, they're well.
They know better than that.
Yeah.
But there was a post yesterday where they spoke about the sheriff's now 35-year-old daughter who had some issues at 19, and the sheriff and his wife were very open about the issues that she had, and in fact talked about her issues not on the campaign trail but on the circuit to try to elevate awareness about drug addiction and how it crosses all socioeconomic barriers.
But did they discuss the success story that she is?
Well, of course not. 2 children, a good marriage.
Married, nice life. She doesn't live in the area anymore. But, I mean, did they talk about the success story that she is today?
No, they didn't. And they inferred that somehow the sheriff was responsible.
Well, I mean, these are the same people that are talking about panhandling on Broadway in Monticello. They're talking about, stuff in Liberty. They're talking about stuff, these other places have, police forces.
Police agencies.
All right? They pay, Monticello, I believe, pays 70-some-odd% of every dollar collected goes to the police agency. Okay? The sheriff's department's job is not to police there, is to help them police
Correct.
there. But at the same time, Mr. Diamond, who's in charge of 308, investigators throughout the state of New York,
Right.
it's his job too to put investigators there to help them as well.
No question. Well, and so that's why, to this point, I've been, young ideas, new ideas, but where you are the candidate, you are responsible for your campaign.
Everybody that's
and
involved.
if somebody is putting, and I'm told, I'm not on social media, and with my wife away, I don't get my morning briefings.
I do show. I do give you the karaoke updates.
You give me the karaoke updates, though, absolutely, for neighbor Carl. But to allow that to go in a campaign, and a campaign for an office that's supposed to be above politics, because you're protecting everybody in Sullivan County, I then question the character of that person who's surrounding themselves with people that would stoop so low and demonstrate such despicable conduct as to bring up a tragedy that's now 15, 16 years ago.
My question is, where's the chair of the Republican Party saying, hey, guys, let's act like Republicans here and knock this off?
Well, the chair of the Republican Party, I understand, is the employer of the person that's posting these. And let's face it,
that is correct.
They're being posted anonymously. So as soon as somebody makes an anonymous comment, throw it in the trash. It's meaningless. If you really believe you have something, then have the guts and the courage to put your name to it. If you're not going to put your name to it, save the ink. Cast it aside.
You are correct, though. One of the people that are putting up some nasty comments about Mike Schiff and his family works for
the chairman of the Republican Party.
For the chairman of the Republican Party.
Well, it's he'll be quick to say, well, I don't control what she does outside of work.
I understand that.
Well, I understand, but maybe you need to do a better job of selecting your employees. That could be. People have a right to endorse whoever they want, but wasn't it the chairman of the Republican Party that didn't want to endorse the four-time incumbent?
That is correct.
Yeah. So that's what a chairman of the Republican Party is.
Correct.
He's out trying to get Democrats elected, and he's very good at it.
That's his forte, by the way.
That is the niche. He runs kind of a boutique party.
Yeah.
And his niche in this boutique party is getting Democrats elected.
He's very good at it.
And in fact, they went to the bullpen in 23 to bring him in.
Correct.
To get some Democrats elected, and he did it.
He
was proud of it.
He was on the radio, the WJFF interview on November 9th. You can look it up. You can go on YouTube and look it up.
Yep.
And he said, I was brought in to take out Rob Doherty.
Right.
And I was brought in by Tom Bowles and other committeemen to take out Rob Doherty, is what he says exactly.
Yeah, and in the process took out George Conklin.
Michael Brooks.
Michael Brooks.
The late, great Michael Brooks.
Absolutely. So
fine people, by the way. If I'm not your cup of tea, I understand that, But Michael Brooks and George Conklin are the two finest people you ever want to meet.
Well, and they are, and I agree with you. And I worked side by side with them for 4 years, and really even more than that. But not only are they fine people, but they were very competent and qualified people and dedicated themselves to do the job that they were hired by the people of Sullivan County to do. They're amongst the few who were there more than just on Thursday morning.
Oh, yeah. They each were there a full day during the week, whether it was meeting week or not meeting week.
Yep.
Every week they were there for a full day. And when I say full day, 8:30 to 5 o'clock, all day, doing work, asking questions. Because keep in mind, when you receive your packet with the resolutions, you can then go ask the commissioners questions.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's kind of your
And
job.
if you're really good, you can ask the questions before you get your packet because you should know what's going on.
There are a few select people that can do that. That's correct.
So I just needed to bring that up
All
before
right.
we bring Dave in. That folks, we want to encourage everyone to get out there and vote June 24th. Have your voice heard. It's an important election. The election of sheriff of Sullivan County, law enforcement, safe streets is important not only for our safety but our property values, our school integrity. It's very, very important to get out there and vote. It's a Republican primary. If you're a Republican, get out there and vote. But we need to get the parties to get some of this nonsense under control. For one thing, it adds nothing to determining who's the most qualified candidate.
Correct.
And what it does is it causes qualified candidates to walk away and say, why do I want to put my family through this?
I would never put my family through that.
Never.
Yeah,
I would never do it again.
Correct.
I would never do it again. So with that, Dave, welcome to Ion Sullivan.
Thank you.
So we're happy to have Dave back. We had Dave here several weeks ago when, at that time, the headlines, the lead stories on the broadcast news was what's going on in the Department of Corrections. We had correction officers being suspended, being fired, leaving. And
No,
now,
I think at the time they were being threatened.
They were being threatened.
That was being threatened.
And now, the news cycle the way it is, it's you catch a story every now and again, but it's not the center of attention. And I think the governor is probably happy about that. And,
or manufactured that.
or has manufactured that. And so, Dave, can we assume that all's quiet on the corrections front and everybody's happy and the inmates are quiet and behaving and the safety has been restored?
Absolutely not.
What?
How can that be?
It couldn't be further from the truth. It's worse now than it was.
Worse.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. So on March 10th, the governor fired 2,000 officers, and the strike came to an end. They had been whittling it down through some pretty aggressive tactics of taking people's health insurance. That was a real kicker, where everybody's people's health insurance was being taken. They were calling back people who were out with medical documentation, whether it was from comp, FMLA.
I mean, but how can you do this?
They did it.
That is just crazy. I mean,
it was. So
Well,
what
the
they-
answer is how they can do it is the mechanism to stop it is the state of New York.
oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so what they did is they whittled it down, and they kind of got to a point and said, okay, that's it. We got about 2,000 that are out, and they fired them. And whether or not they fired people who were on FMLA, on comp, who had medical excuses. I mean, some of the stories are absolutely horrendous of the what they did to some of these people. So now you have the facilities that are open are still majorly understaffed. And what they've done is they've pretty much stopped regular programming for the inmates.
So that's the education programs, the rehab programs,
That's
the
pretty much
daily
everything.
work.
And even in like some of the facilities where the yard is closed for certain days, that the visiting room is open. The visiting rooms for max facilities are now only open on the weekends, on which they would normally be open every day. Like you said, the school programs, any kind of rehabilitation kind of things are all closed. They're running on, right now, most of the facilities are running with, you have to work at least 5 or 6 12-hour days. You get no vacation. The only way that you can take a vacation is, the only way you can get a day off, I should say, is through medical documentation. So you can, there's people that are sitting on vacation time and they can't take a day off.
So when you say 5 days, I mean, you're talking 60 hours a week, right?
Yes.
Minimum.
That's minimum, and so some facilities, I think there's only a handful of facilities that are actually running a regular 8-hour-a-day schedule, and I think that's about 5 or 6 in the state.
Now, can you be mandated if you're working a 12-hour shift? You can still be mandated?
You can be mandated, but one of the things they have done is because they've cut back on pretty much everything. Everything is basically at this point. They don't want you working past 16 hours. They can, so that has stopped.
That's nice of
Well, that's
them.
big of them.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't follow that same prescription though.
Yeah.
She's okay with me working more than 16 hours.
So they have, so they're in this situation where the staff is getting burnt out, and there's a lot of animosity between the people who were fired and the people who are left behind. That is probably the saddest part of this entire.
Oh, I'm sure. Because you're brothers in arms in these situations.
Yeah, and then you had this situation where you had these people were fired, and the people who were fired are looking at people who went back and like, you abandoned us, and then the people inside are kind of like, if you had just come back, it wouldn't be as bad as it is right now because this is worse than it was.
But now, to be fair to the people who stayed, I mean, they have mortgages and car payments
Absolutely.
and families and all these other things. They have life also.
They have a life.
And now, I'd like to, if you know it, the dynamics. So I understand that there's a lot of Army personnel in there, right?
So the National Guard was called up during the strike, and it was approximately 6,000 National Guard members were brought into the facilities. They're still in the facilities.
And that's always a dangerous recipe. Now,
I agree.
My oldest brother was a student at Kent State when the National Guard was called in to hold down, at that time in the 70s, it was student protests.
Mm-hmm.
Protesting the
Well,
Vietnam
that got a little bit more than we assumed protest.
And that got a little out of hand. Now, I am very clear. I am not casting aspersions on the National Guard. The work they do is tremendous.
Agreed.
They're there. They are helping safeguard the country and our freedoms for all of us. The problem is when you place somebody from the outside inside a pressure cooker, and many National Guardsmen are young folks that are reservists, all of a sudden they don't understand all of the culture. You have, at Kent State, you had local police and then National Guard. Here you've got correction officers and National Guard. And what I'm hearing, and Dave, you can comment on this, again, no issue with the National Guard, but how are they interacting? Because they haven't gone through the academy. They
Correct.
don't know all the policies and procedures. So they're there with, figuratively, not inside, a gun and a badge, and not a lot of Department of Corrections training. So how's that working?
Well, so they sent them to the academy in bunches, is from what I believe, to get a crash course on corrections, just so that they were capable of doing some of the basic aspects of corrections. And so what the state has done, the government has done now, is keeping them there on a voluntary basis, but they don't have all of the responsibilities as a correction officer. So they're kind of like a reinforcement force within the facility to help things move. And one of the issues as a taxpayer that people should know is the expense that this is.
I'm going to get into that with you in a second. So I do have a question. Who do they answer to? So are they being run by their commander, or are they under the superintendent of that jail? I mean, who do they answer to?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it would be, from everything I understand about what's happening, is they're still under the command. They're still under the command of the military, the military structure.
Yeah. So now.
Yeah. So you're not getting a full chain of command.
Correct.
As you would get in a correction.
Which is essential in a correction facility.
Very essential.
Chain of command.
Correct.
Very essential. And it's just, I mean, everything that I'm getting back from the people in there is that it's an absolute mess. That You know,
are you
so-
shocked by
yeah,
that?
No, I'm not.
I mean, like if someone said to you, you have 17 years experience, correct? And say, all right, give me the worst case scenario you can give me. You'd pretty much come up with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue, and this is what is the danger that is coming. Because
it's boiling to the surface. I mean, it's coming.
So just recently at Ulster Correctional Facility, there was a protest by the inmates because they're not supposed to be staying at Ulster. Ulster is a reception center, so as you first come to the facility, then you get sent. And they don't have the pieces to kind of take care of people for long-term.
Yeah, but where do you send them to if there's not enough officers in the place?
Exactly
I mean,
so they had a protest and they had use of force to stop
is anyone
the
shocked
protest.
by this?
No, and I mean and it's going to just get worse. And then you're going to have these understaffed facilities. You're going to have people that are not fully trained, whether they're in the military with the National Guard in there.
And part of it is recruiting, right? We're hurting recruiting badly.
Incredibly bad.
Okay, so your next generation's not coming up, and we all know how this works. In any job that you're in, you have the mother hens of the group, right? So as you come in as a young person and your first day on the job, you have your training officer, and they're like, hey, this is what you're going to handle this, you're going to handle this. Don't worry about that guy. Don't get into the conversation with that guy. And they walk you through the and you see a lot of horrific stuff there, right? I mean, we've talked about that, right?
It's
so now,
close as it can get.
So now, who's guiding these
mentors?
Yeah. Who's the mentors?
Well, that's a big problem too, is because some of the guys who were fired. I mean, you got guys. Some of the best that I've ever worked with were some of those people.
Yeah.
And who took a stand and said, I'm not going to take this anymore. And they're the ones. So now who's going to train? And you have an understaffed. They're wore out. There's guys that I know that are there, and they're like, man, I barely have time to see my family, to do anything.
I mean, on the hunting's out this season. I mean, a lot of the perks of being a CEO in the state system was the swaps.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that stuff is gone now, right? And now you're just dealing with straight up brutality. Your teammate in the National Guard, and this is no offense to the National Guard, we love what you do and we respect you 100%, but you're not one of them. Right.
No, and also too is for the National Guard. You have a situation. So what happens if there's an emergency and let's say there's a natural disaster? What do we do?
Oh, it's lockdown 23 hours a day.
So what do we decide? Do we decide that there's the natural disaster, hurricane that hits New York City is more important than staffing the prison system?
I can assure you that that's what it'll be, because the people that are on the outside and the politicians and the media will be screaming because they've already started to push what's going on in corrections to the back burner.
Oh, yeah. But David touched on a second, and we'll go over it now, is the cost of all this.
The cost is staggering.
Okay, so I own a business in Monticello, and every day I see National Guard, two guys with, very large vehicles, buy lunch for several hundred people.
Yes.
Okay? And they're paying this restaurant, right? So there's no cooking. So half your staff is getting whatever they want for dinner, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
that's remarkable.
And they're allowed to leave to go get it, right?
Yeah.
And now the policy is not the same for the COs in there.
Well, that'll be good for morale.
Oh, that's going to go far. I mean, and so
there is. I'm hearing some gripe, but because of the military presence, the guys are kind of like, we would just want to get them out of here at this point.
Yeah. So, and it's no offense to them, but again, this goes back to the governor not thinking this thing through and understanding, what goes through a working person's mind in these situations. I mean, she's looking at them as widgets.
She doesn't look at them as anything other than, from what I've seen in the discussions with everything that I've done to try to help the staff, is that They are on the opposite side of an ideology and political movement, and they're the enemy. That's just how. Whenever I had a conversation with the commissioner when we were trying to resolve this, and everything that she was saying about the strike, over and over again, it was that there was an enemy mentality that she had against the officers and the staff,
against the hardworking people of the corrections, and then she totally disregards their safety. Okay, and now the tax bill for this is coming. You're paying 3 shifts a day. You're paying for all the meals coming from outside sources, and then you're putting them up in local hotels.
This is because I've heard numbers of over $500 million.
I mean,
Yeah.
$500 million.
Yeah.
Well,
I
that'll
mean-
be one of those licenses.
Yeah.
One of the casino
Yeah.
licenses.
Yeah, I mean, this is what's happening in our state right now.
So
Yeah,
Dave, what I'd love to do, because I think that the impression that many people have of the prison system is what they see on television.
Yeah.
Most of them have never been in prison. Most of them have never worked in a prison, visited a prison, or even visited a family member in prison, or even known anyone that was in prison. And I think the impression is what we see in TV is you walk down a big hallway with cells on each side, and the guys are all, or the ladies are all inside the cells locked in. That's not my experience in the years that I have toured many of the facilities. They're communities. They get up in the morning and they're out and they're going to school, they're going to work. They're mingling amongst the staff. Take us through what a typical day looks like in a facility.
So I've always felt that one of the, if you really want to learn corrections, run a dorm. That's really where it's at.
Well, we want to have SUNY Sullivan not try corrections then.
Yeah, so I mean,
Because they failed on the dorm.
Terribly.
Woodburn, we would have 57 inmates on a dorm, and in rows, 4 rows, bunks, and they have their stuff there, and they get up, they go, they do their stuff, and then you'll have a couple that are still there, or stay in the dorm. Whether they're the porters and cleaning up and kind of doing their thing. And, at night, though, you have those 57 guys in there. I mean, after the daily, what they're going to go do for the day, and then you're going to make sure that those 57 guys are kind of doing the right thing. And
And what time is lights out?
so lights out depending on the sporting event that would happen on that night.
Okay.
Because you
okay,
can
yeah,
get word that, the Super Bowl or in the playoffs they get
Yeah,
the same
that
thing.
makes- that
So
makes
11 is basically.
Okay, so they're done with their day 4-ish, right? So now there's 7 hours of just mingling.
Mingling, yeah, you're waiting for chow run is a little after 4, and the other officer will bring them down, bring them back, and then they're kind of hanging out, waiting to get out to the yard or something like that, and you're just hoping for the best. I mean, you kind of, so the other day, from what I heard at one of the facilities here at Woodburn, you have your phone booths over there, and this is always a point of contention, particularly in a dorm. You have 57 inmates, and you have about 3 phones, 4 phones. So
I can do the math on that real fast. That's
and that's always it's always an issue, because you got to make sure that the phones aren't being run by the inmates, that everybody's getting a chance, and that's always. So they had a guy
running the phones.
Yeah, so they had a guy the other day that was in the phone booth, and they stabbed him up pretty good. They cut into his neck, and they thought they was going to lose him. So it was. So you would have that could happen right in front of you. Suddenly.
So you got typical day. I remember touring. I think it was Sullivan, and they yard. They had basketball and weights and stuff outside at Sullivan, and so I don't know. It was 50, 60 people out on the yard at any given time, right?
Yeah, so so every facility is different when it comes to yard sizes. I mean, Eastern, which is I'm going to use some of the facilities that are closer here. Eastern, I remember 650 inmates out on a yard at one time.
Oh
I mean, that's a huge yard.
Oh my
So just
God.
think about that. You got 650 guys lifting weights, playing basketball, hanging around,
Hanging out,
whatever.
doing their thing.
You basically have Monticello High School
Right.
out on the track.
Right.
Basically.
And then
Yeah.
you've got a situation where look, we've all been in gyms. You get a little elbow gets thrown, all of a sudden here comes a weight plate coming at somebody. You've got instant melee with 300 to 500 people there, and now a diminished staff. How do you corral that?
Well, this is part of the intense situation that officers have is when you have a situation like that. I remember, Eastern, I was a sergeant in Eastern for a short period of time, and I remember there was a fight, and at the time I think there was about 600 or so inmates out there, and it was because of a soccer game.
Yeah, sure.
And but then you're trying to get the people involved while getting in between 600 convicted felons.
And some of these guys have mental health issues.
Yeah.
Some of these guys have histories of violence. Not all of them, but some of them do.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting recipe there.
Yeah, it's a tough position to be in, and it causes a lot of stress, and it causes there's some of the statistics, and I have some here just to bring up on what it does to officers, what this job does, and how it got to a point that they ended up striking, because of some of the things that they're going through. So when you get into staff and how bad things are for correction officers, one of the highest divorce rates of any profession. Substance abuse, one of the highest. PTSD, 1 in 3 correction officers has suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, which is higher than people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. These are suicide rate is 7 times higher than average, and this is the one I've always felt was the one that really encompasses what the Department of Corrections and what being a correction officer can do to a person. The life expectancy.
This is the one.
Life expectancy of a correction officer is 59 years old. There's only 10 nations in the world that have a lower life expectancy. You have the country of Afghanistan has a higher life expectancy than a correction officer. Iraq, Yemen, these are war-torn nations that have a higher life expectancy than people who are correction officers. And this is where you get where people have had enough and they break. And this is where you have some of the issues that the governor and the Democrats and the left, in particular the city, have this animosity against correctional staff, stating that they're just very abusive and which is definitely an issue that we want to solve. But I believe, looking at it and going through it, and I've talked to the politicians about this, is we forget that these officers are in this world, and it has an effect on them.
Correct.
And it that effect comes out in certain ways.
So part of that effect is whether an incident happens or it doesn't happen. The fact that it can happen.
Yes, that's
okay. So you walk, you go in, you come in your
where else
street.
do you have a concentration of people with the propensities to do harm?
Oh, I agree.
Than in a prison, so it's constant.
So you put on your gear, right?
Sure.
And you go to your locker room, you change for your shift. Now you're in your uniform, and you walk out there, and you're there. Now keep in mind, you're there for a minimum of 12 hours, and then you can get mandated. Okay. Right? Mm-hmm. And so now that's always on your mind also, right? Yeah. Am I going to make my son's Little League game? Am I going to make my daughter's recital? Am I going to, get out of here on time? Tonight's my work's birthday, stuff like that. So that wears on you too. The stress of the job wears on you a lot. And then you're out there and you are in danger all the time, okay? If
the
they
potential is there.
If they want to get you, if they want to get you, they're going to get you.
I've always equated it to being on idle. You're idling and ready for a race, because at any moment that alarm goes off and you're having a conversation, and suddenly now you could be engaged in a fight for your life, and you have to go through the day ready for that situation. Because you're dealing with. Just recently, the past couple of years, we have the pepper spray. Before that, in some facilities and Max's, you would have a baton. But a lot of times when you have a use of force, you're in a fist fight. You're you know, I mean, if you have a situation and nobody's around, you hit your alarm, and you're suddenly
You still got to deal with it.
you're fighting.
Yeah.
You're literally fighting until help arrives. But you're, you know, I mean, I don't think any other job. You know, you're the desk clerk working somewhere. Well, you know, at any point, just so you know, you could be engaged in a fist fight.
I was in the legislature, so that happens there
Well,
too.
that happened all the time, yeah.
It happened all the time.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, they I mean, you know, the wear and tear that you don't get to see, right? On the mind, on the stomach, on the heart, you know, you're just there all the time, and you're just constantly, you know, it's rolling on you all the time. And then you're expected to take off your uniform, get in your car, and it's all gone.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work like that.
No, and then these is so to get to some of the strange things that the state of New York has implemented on the staff. So you have, let's say you do have a use of force, and it involves multiple inmates and multiple staff. Then what they wanted to do, and this is per directive for use of force directive, everybody gets separated. You cannot go and reference any of video footage, even if it's there. You cannot reference it. You have to write down everything that you did and everything you saw everybody else do. If you were a witness, so this is part of those things where people are like, why is it we can't go back and look at the video? You're gonna investigate us. You're gonna question us. You're gonna use the video, and you're gonna bring it. So now I had this use of force, and this is one of the things that cause people to be so stressed out. If they're involved in a use of force, you might lose your job.
You might be criminally prosecuted.
Exactly. You may be criminally prosecuted. Maybe the state doesn't indemnify you at that point. Maybe they say, "Hey, you went so far."
I mean, look at those two state troopers who ran the car up there in Kingston.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, someone died. Tish James goes after the troopers. Tommy Mungier, local Liberty guy, sticks up for his people, right? Say, hey, this is policy. This is how they're told to handle it, right? They come after him like a ton of bricks.
Absolutely.
I mean, they almost destroy the guy's life for sticking up for his people. Meanwhile, those two people had to go through trial. They wound up getting cleared, but your whole family has to go through this when you're just following the rules that you were asked to follow to keep people safe.
You can be suspended without pay. I remember I knew the sergeant who was suspended without pay for 11 months. Before the state said, yeah, you didn't do anything wrong, you can have your job back.
You know, that's funny you say that. My sister was a sergeant in the NYPD. Right before she retires, she moves up to lieutenant, and then they asked her to become captain. And she was like, no way. And they were like, why not? She said, God forbid there's an incident. You're going to take me and ruin my whole pension, what I worked for 20 years. You're going to put me on ice. And then you're going to include that in my final five. Yeah. And you're going to ruin my life. And she's like, I'm going to leave. So you have people either leaving the profession, okay? Then, and they're going to tell everyone they know not to do it, right?
I would never tell anybody that I actually cared about to go into the Department of Corrections.
Well, I mean, and directly, you have a lot of father-sons, father-daughters.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's
most of the people is somebody. It's a family member. You're very good friends with somebody, and it's like, hey, come on in, and
you're not telling your son or your daughter, hey, it's a good career, and it is a good career, but not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not until the governor understands the safety of the staff is just as important as the safety of the inmates.
Well, Dave, what I wanted to get into, also, I remember Governor Cuomo, when there was Andrew, the one that's going to do for the city what he did for the state. And I don't know if the city can handle that. So when there was a public mental health issue in the state, the governor took it on, rolled up his sleeves,
you saw that.
closed 95% of the beds, and then decreed that we've reduced the population in our mental health facilities by 95% by replacing them with in-community programs.
Yeah, so they took away the beds,
Right.
right, and then said, okay, we reduced our inpatient by 95%,
Right.
but you put them out in the street.
Right, you put them out in the street. So the fear that I have as someone that has been in this system is Judge Joe Stecker.
As a judge and an
As
attorney.
a judge,
like,
as an
boy, I
attorney,
just
as a
wanna clear that up,
prosecutor.
Mike, you know.
Yeah. So Judge Joe Stecker, sitting in Monticello, sentences someone to 6 years in prison, 5 years of post-release supervision. Now they get in, and what we've got is we've got a population that's constantly on the increase for inmates, and to get population to match that for the staff is difficult under the best of circumstances, and now we've wiped out 2,000 staff, so just to get back to where we were is going to take maybe years.
I don't know how they're going to do it. So it's 2,000 staff are fired, over 500 resigned, and nearly every single person who could retire has retired.
So we're talking maybe
As
4,000
soon
or
as that date
5,000.
comes, they're out the door.
They're pretty much out the door.
We're thinking maybe 4,000 or 5,000 then.
I would say somewhere around 4,000.
And how many people are in the system at a fully
So there was 10,000 officers.
10,000 officers
went on
You're
strike.
40%.
So I think maybe 11,000. So you're
So
40%.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So Dave,
It's crazy.
how long is it going to take the governor to say, Mr. Commissioner of Corrections, we need to start getting some of these folks out so we drop the population, because these damn judges keep sending us more criminals.
They have been.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
the
the
truth.
reality is they've been sending them out.
So our communities are getting these people who, and look, I now practice in the defense area, and I'm a strong advocate, and as a judge, I was a strong advocate for rehabilitation, and the Department of Corrections had good programs. Guys could come out and be certified as electricians, as plumbers, as carpenters. They had good programs for mental health up at Marcy. They had, and other places, they had good drug programs. But now those programs are shut down, you were saying.
Yeah, for the most part, everything in the state is in chaos.
So we're turning these guys loose. They haven't served their whole sentence, so we haven't really been able to rehabilitate them. And they're going, where are they getting paroled to? The same community where they were arrested from.
Yeah.
So, folks, you may not have a relative or a friend that's a correction officer. You may not think this hits you. It's not long before these criminals are coming back and putting more strain and more stress on our law enforcement, on our criminal
And now
justice
with bail
system.
reform.
And now with bail reform, say hello to your neighbors.
Correct.
Yeah. One of the things that happens, and I don't think a lot of people understand where the push comes from to reform corrections in this way to kind of let the inmates do everything, and it's so there's a lot of not-for-profits that back these programs. And the Vera Institute of Justice has $154 million. This is a not-for-profit that
Not for
not for
loss.
loss.
Not for loss at all.
but
But where's that $154 million coming
Those
from?
NGOs.
that's a great where are they coming from? So to remember, if you're a not-for-profit, and there's a couple other ones, the Correction Association of New York. You have to tell the story of why you need funding. And so you're telling this story, hey, there's always this problem. We have to reform this. We have to change this. We have to do this.
Dave, we have to be clear. The funding that we're talking about is not bake sales out in front of Walmart.
Oh, yeah.
Where's the funding coming from?
From the taxpayers.
Your tax dollars.
yeah.
This is your tax dollars at work. This is your governor's tax dollars at work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
the roads can have potholes you could bury somebody in, but we're sending $158 million to deal with these situations.
Yeah. It's a very. I wish somebody would investigate some of these not-for-profit agencies, because one of the things that they do, and I've gone through.
Well, we saw what happened at the federal level when we started to look at those.
Yeah,
because
because I've looked through some of their tax returns, and you start to see where money funnels to other not-for-profit law agencies, and you start to see the same names and people on boards of this, and they're getting money here, and everybody's getting money, and there's a lot of money getting thrown around, a lot of millions and hundreds of thousands, and it just, they're influencing these politicians to make changes and they're not getting the information from the staff who's actually in there, or even a lot of times from the inmates who've been reformed and get out, or that are reformed and are like, hey, this is a bad idea. HALT is a bad idea. By allowing the inmates to basically run the facilities, this is a bad idea. And
we tried that with Attica, and we learned a long time ago that it didn't work.
Yeah.
That was bad.
I think it's going to be a bad summer, to be honest with you. I just think it's going to be a bad
You got
summer.
a lot of older facilities where there's probably not great air conditioning, so it gets hot and it gets stuffy and tempers run.
But they also know that if they push, the inmates know.
Sure.
If they push, there is a breaking point here.
Of course.
They understand this.
There has to be.
And they know that, we can chase this guy out of here, this guy out of here, this guy out of here. And the more people we chase, the better shot they're going to start cutting people loose.
Yeah.
And look,
That's how it works.
They're cutting them loose now.
It's not
They're
safe for
cutting
the
them out.
officers. It's not safe for the staff. And it's not safe for the inmates.
No, it's not safe for the inmates. This is a big thing that I've always, when I'm looking at it and I try to explain it to people, that you're putting these people in incredible danger because we can't protect them.
Right.
We can't protect ourselves. How can we protect the other inmates in there? Now, somebody who does do something and gets incarcerated, people make mistakes and they change, particularly young men. They're young, they change, they get, and then for us to be able to give them the opportunity to change, we have to have structure and particularly safety within the facility. And that's been taken away. And what happens is you're basically going to feed these people to the most powerful of the gangs, the most powerful of the inmates.
Predators.
The actual predators. And I mean, these are predators.
They're apex predators.
They are unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
They truly,
They're masters at manipulation.
And they have no problem being in jail. Keep that in mind. I mean,
it's their environment.
They're very comfortable.
Yeah, you have people, and it's hard for a lot of people, but you have people who like jail.
Sure.
They're I'll come right back.
Well, it's the only sense of stability they have.
Yeah. So, it's a horrible situation. It's a horrible situation for the staff that were fired, for those that are left behind. I mean, it's really sad for me having these conversations where you see these guys mad at each other, and it's just unfortunate.
And again, you're talking father, son, family members. Maybe one family member leaves or gets fired, and then he's like, "Well, why aren't you leaving? They fired me. Why, I thought we were brothers here. Now what's going on?"
Yeah, you got to, people need health insurance. They need to have their families. They have, you can't just make this decision on your own. A lot of times when you're looking at your kids and looking at your wife, and you had to go back in. And
that's the draw of that position.
Correct.
There's very, very few people, if you go into career day in the third grade at the Cook Elementary School or Liberty Elementary School, wherever, very few are going to raise their hand and say, I want to be a corrections officer when I grow up. But it presents a good, and Rob, you confronted this when we negotiated the corrections contract at the county. It needs to be a good career option so people go in there, get trained, and then stay there so you don't have the turnover, so that you have people that can respond to a powder keg in a moment.
When I negotiated the last contract, the contract that they're currently under, they did not have health insurance in retirement.
Correct. They couldn't retire.
They couldn't retire. I found that to be insane. Yeah. And we were like, we're going to fix this. And I mean, I remember, and then John Wagner hit me with that stat, the 59-year-old stat, right? And I didn't believe him at first. I thought it was a negotiating tactic. And then I looked it up, and I was like,
It's true.
"Oh my God, this
it's true.
This is true."
Tell anybody, Google it, whatever you got to do.
This is true.
Take a look.
And then,
I'm not.
and then, so now you can't retire. Well, in our county situation, you couldn't retire because you didn't have health insurance.
Right.
Right. And your life expectancy is the clock is ticking against you.
Well,
you
your
want to talk
early
about pressure
retirement is
building.
55.
Yeah, I mean, and you want to talk about pressure building up inside you. I mean, and also let's be fair, they're humans. This is how mistakes get made.
Right.
Okay. I mean, they're going in there, like you said, with the motor idling, right? And they're ready to go. What sets the CO off, right? You don't know what sets them off.
No.
So
The change in me over from the time I left till now is absolutely dramatic. I can't explain to people just how much my life has changed. How I barely drink anymore. I feel happier. I'm not tense. I didn't realize how much pressure I was under until I left. It is night and day. You walk away, and after a couple months, you start to realize, like, what was that? What was I involved in? How did I, how much did that really affect me? I didn't think it was affecting me as bad as it actually.
I mean, you imagine people do 2-3 tours in the Army. They spend 6 years and they come back. You spend 17 years.
Yeah, 17 years I was in, and it's just you see things that just are. You didn't think human beings did that. You didn't think they were capable. You might hear stories, but it's there in front of you.
It's undeniable at that point.
When they're, you got guys just the most insane things, weapons in their anus, and they're fighting, and to try. It blows your mind. You're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
So
Why are we fighting over this?
From your perspective, society keeps making criminals.
Yes.
Prosecutors and judges keep sending them to prison. Where does this go? I mean, what breaks this cycle? I mean, because right now it seems like we're going down a steep hill with a tailwind.
I think we have to get past the political atmosphere, and we have to be able to talk to one another. And I think that the environment, particularly over the past decade, has gotten so much animosity between parties, and this is something that we as a species have to deal with, and we have to have these conversations. We have to talk about what's best for everybody involved.
But are those discussions happening now?
No.
I mean, we're a couple of months into this thing.
They're not happening. I think so they're going to throw more money at officers.
Well, money doesn't solve the problem.
It doesn't solve the problem. It does not solve
You have to make
problem.
it a career like it once was.
Yeah, and I will say they did a couple little things. They did the scanning now has been implementing for inmates to go on a visit. They have to come back to get scanned. We had talked about this before about the airport scanner you'd go through, and they're doing a scanning of legal mail now, which has decreased a lot of the drugs coming in. That has helped.
Well, not only are they doing that, but I mailed something to a client in Walk Hill Correctional Facility, and they actually called my office to say, we got this from you. We haven't gotten stuff from your office before. Do you know who John Doe is?
Yep.
Yes, he's one of my clients. I'm representing him on an appeal or a 440 motion. Okay, thank you, Mr. McGuire. We'll deliver it right to him. So we actually got phone calls with some legal.
And that's been a
That's a big help.
And the staff were asking for things like this. They were like, "Hey, we need to do something." It took a strike before it ended up happening, and unfortunately, people's lives have been ruined because of it. But we have to have discussion. We have to be able to talk to one another. Security staff, civilian staff, those creating the laws. You have to be able to come in and talk about it from both sides, and this is a problem that we have. It's just it's human nature with turning the criminality, and the only way to really do it is just to talk, to sit down and have conversations.
And those conversations aren't happening. So how do they? If we have a situation here where the management governor's side don't recognize a problem? They have to recognize that there's a problem here. I mean, they're down 40% of their staff.
I mean, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why. It looks like again, where such animosity against staff from the governor's office. Makes it difficult to sit down and actually have these conversations. And I guess they don't want to go. I was hearing about a lot of the legislators in the city having, fully not being compassionate to the correction staff, and I don't know. I don't know what the answer is besides to have a conversation. And I feel like until we have something where people's lives are lost, or we have a facility that we lose a facility, and you see the actual chaos that ensues, and people's lives are lost, and the people finally see something, and maybe that's it.
It's going to take a tragedy,
Absolutely.
Is what you're saying.
I think so.
It's going to take God forbid, a death of an officer.
Yeah.
Because if it's a death of an inmate, the officer will be blamed.
Yeah.
There won't be an explanation. That's what it's going to take.
Until the government is willing to prioritize the staff's safety, nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's going to happen. Wow. Rob, last word.
No, this is a fascinating, ongoing situation. It's quite fluid. Hopefully, just because it's on the headlines, people should still look it up and see what's going on. I know when it first happened, people were bringing hot cocoa and all this other stuff. I understand all that, but you have to advocate for these people, because they're the ones who are, when they take the bad people out of your neighborhoods and your society, these are the guys watching them. And we're hoping that they can change some of them
and watching them in a concentrated
Correct.
fashion. So, Dave, I want to thank you on behalf of Ion Sullivan.
Thank you
for
very
taking
much.
the time
Thanks
to
for
come
having
back.
me. Let me tell my story.
It's so important. It's unfortunately not what most of our audience probably thinks about on a day-to-day basis, but it's out there, and especially a county like Sullivan. You can't live in this county and not know multiple correction officers.
It's impossible.
Kids going to school with your children and their parents. So this is an important thing, and we're going to keep an eye on it. We want to remind everyone again, the Republican primaries, Democratic primaries come up on June 24th. Rob and I will have some more information about that in the weeks ahead. And again, folks, if you find Ion Sullivan to be a good information source and one of your supplemental information sources, you want to be sure to subscribe. You want to subscribe. Once we get up to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be able to do live chat and live streaming and make it more interactive. You want to be sure to share this on your platforms. Last week's show was shared in various places, and we were over 800 listeners last week. So that was really terrific.
That's just on Ion Sullivan. Plus, there's
that's just on Ion Sullivan. Plus, it was shared in other places
on the YouTube.
On the YouTubes, right?
Did I just sound old there? I think I just sound old there saying the YouTube.
Yeah. And leave us a comment if you disagree. If you are siding with the governor on this issue and you disagree, leave us a comment. You can drop us a line also at ionsullivan@gmail.com. And always, before you get up and head to the refrigerator now or head to the barbecue, if you're watching us on YouTube, please, right now,
smash
that like button. And folks, on behalf of Rob Doherty and Dave Cornish today, I am Mike McGuire. I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Ion Sullivan. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week with another edition of Ion Sullivan.